Dearest gentle listeners, you are listening to the Ladies Bridgerton, the talk of the ton. We are your effervescent hosts, your neighbourhood-friendly Kiwi, Tash from Middle-earth, New Zealand.
And Patty, Regency romance enthusiast, currently writing her chaos romantic heroine era.
Settle down onto your favourite settee as we delve into the lives of the elite and illustrious ladies, lords, and royalty of the ton. This Bridgerton podcast is two friends talking romance, symbolism, Easter eggs, and deep diving into the connections of our favourite characters. We cover both book, TV series, and notable social media, and therefore will contain spoilers.
Dearest gentle listeners, we continue into our deep discussion of the carriage. I think I could give this scene a discussion for as many minutes as I think fans rewound and rewatched it. There are so many nuances. The nose caress, the slight shoulder reveal turning his siren into his favorite goddess, the many moments of ask and answer. This scene has sugar, spice, and everything nice.
The one funny thing about that statement is, if we're going by the Eros and Psyche story, Venus would be his mother-in-law.
Yes, but his favorite goddess in the show has always been Aphrodite.
It has been, but it's just funny because Aphrodite is represented by Portia. And I think if Colin had one of those dreams about Portia, he'd be waking up in a whole entirely different kind of sweat.
He'd be retching. He'd be retching.
Okay.
Pen would be holding his head to her bosom, and he'd be like, "I had that dream again. I had that dream again.
Comfort me. I could never look at her again." It would be hilarious. Poor Colin. He'd need some serious therapy after that.
So funny.
For today, we are going to be doing a throwback to when we did the first Kiss episode, and we are going to start out by reading the book's equivalent of the carriage scene that inspired this entire part in the show. I don't actually know which one I like. I mean, when you're reading it, you get like all the feels because your mind is creating exactly what you want it to be. You feel every word on the page. But the way that they filmed the carriage scene, I don't think that they could have done a better job. I think every single little nuanced detail, the lighting, the way that they did her makeup to shimmer, Luke's nuances in his facial expressions, the proximity that they kept the whole time, everything was perfection.
Yes, it was well edited. And as I was going through my notes leading into this episode, my notes that I had written originally when we first decided to team up, I had said, like, it amazed me, and I didn't know if it was a natural choice or if it had just occurred that way based on the lighting and stuff. But they both had their glow up to appear older. They both like aged up a lot in their look for this season
and sound.
But in this scene, they both look so young, and it really does give you the vibes of two teenagers in the backseat of a car, and like as somebody's first time, and like being very vulnerable and naive a little bit, and the beginnings of intimacy that you only experience like that first time. Like it totally had that first time feel to it, and they both looked so young. Like where they had tried to chisel his cheeks with the sideburns, yes. You couldn't hide the baby cheeks.
Yeah.
In this scene, like they were there, and then her face was just so perfectly naive throughout it all. Like they both just looked so young, and it totally added to the vibe for me that I had to make note of that when I was in my earlier rewatches. Like I read that, was like, yes, I remember feeling that. Like that was such a big deal.
Yeah, you're really, really right on that one. I didn't really think about how young they look in it, but I think there's a certain amount of vulnerability that we get older and we become a little bit, not jaded per se, but, our synapses are pretty formed at that point, our neural pathways where this happens and our brain knows to expect this. And I think that vulnerability of both of them not knowing how it was going to play out just made them both so young and sweet. And, I think absolutely hats off. I think this is the most rewatched scene in history. I cannot fathom.
It is.
I think this is going to go down as our generations. I know that there are still lots of
When
complaints
you
about this
get
season, but we
when
also
you
got some of the best scenes that we've ever
yeah,
had.
when your scene is like deified in another TV show so
Hmm.
quickly after it happened,
Yes.
with what is it, Emily in Paris or
Emily in
whatever? Like,
Paris redid the carriage scene.
yeah, like that just tells you how iconic this scene was. And it's hats off to the way they chose to film it. It's the chemistry and the friendship and the closeness between Nicola and Luke,
Hmm.
and the trust they had to have with each other to be able to, I mean, it this scene gave me all the feels because it reminded me of the first exploration times myself with the first person, that because you really go into it like having no clue of like, and that's in what we're about to read, how she wants to be a willing partner but she just has no clue what she's doing. And I recently had this conversation with the person that I started that journey with, and we both said the same thing, like we did not know what we were doing. We had no clue
Hmm.
what we were doing, and that's part of what made it special, is learning with that person and growing with that person, and that kind of safety because you knew they were at the same point as you. And even though, we know Colin has had some more experience than Penelope, it really isn't all that much. But with her, it's like it becomes all fresh and new again, because this is the first time he's doing these things with someone that he loves and cares about and wants it to be special for. You know what I mean? Like,
Now we must make haste into today's episode. Finally! Woo! As we are making haste, both Patty, Kay, and myself, by chance, all booked to go to the Bridgerton by Candlelight Orchestra over this weekend. I went on Friday night, New Zealand time, and then Patty and Kay, you went
but
Friday
on
night,
Friday night,
American
US
time.
time.
Because, as I like to say, New Zealand is living in the future. So actually, I'm going to make haste after this part because I do want to give props to the team. They did a wonderful, wonderful job. It was truly magical. They went through all three seasons. For the one in New Zealand, I think our introductions were a little bit better than the American ones, from what I could hear.
Yeah.
They gave a introduction about the TV series, and then before they would play three songs in succession. They would give us what the song name was and the scene that it played in and kind of the feelings that it resonated with. Like, obviously, they'd done some research. They got a few little minor details wrong. Like, they would say Lady Hawkins Ball, not Lord Hawkins Ball. Really minor details like that in one of the songs.
You're so hot about it. Like,
I'm so mad.
you're breathing like
They asked if anyone knew what one of the songs was, and I have just watched like a full, I mean, granted, it was only a 10-minute little, not a documentary, but an interview with the guy who composed that song. I know that song like the back of my head. And they were like, no, that's not the name of the song. And I'm like, yes,
yes, it is.
Like, you guys clearly don't actually know Bridgerton. You're just reading from an info sheet. Like, I know Bridgerton, but obviously they don't know in a crowd, this random girl. So when they were like, oh, no, it's not quite, I'm like, okay, enjoy. Like, I just played it off, but it's fine. It's
Yeah,
fine.
otherwise
It's
there'd
fine.
be
It's
headlines.
fine. Lilacs!
New Zealand woman causes riot at Bridgerton show
I was like,
over song title.
When you get that burny feeling, but I couldn't even Google it to prove them wrong in the middle of it or even after it because there's no reception in it because they've soundproofed the arena so thoroughly.
Oh my goodness.
Oh.
That just cracks me up so much. But yeah, on our end, the people didn't really introduce anything. They talked at the beginning. They said who they were. And they said that this was their first time doing Candlelight Bridgerton, and they were excited, and they knew they were going to have a lot of fun. And then they proceeded to do all of Chris Bauer's work. They did the season 1, 2 songs of season 2, and then talked again and said, oh, by the way, this is the whole list of songs we just did, and randomly listed off like 8 songs.
Hi, little sus. You want to talk carriage scene? I think that Carriage scene is an R18 only event, darling. And I don't think you're
Yeah.
18 years old yet.
No, maybe.
Is Daddy making some ice blocks for you, Mummy?
They're not Daddy.
Sorry for that brief interruption. Little man decided that he was wanting to
Gonna
join
tell
us
on
today.
Dad. He was telling on Daddy.
They were supposed to be making ice blocks for his sore throat because we have a bit of a cold in the house at the moment, and Daddy didn't make the ice blocks. Mummy, Daddy didn't make them.
I'm gonna go tell on Dad. Gonna go tell the boss.
Yeah.
It's so funny.
Yeah, so Patty, I think it was your section that you were talking about your experience.
Oh, yeah. So they have proceeded to read off 6 to 8 titles, and then they continued, did a few more season 2, went into season 3. I noticed, and I think you had the same, we realized we had the same repertoire.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was the same set list.
Taylor Swift music was decidedly absent.
Yes.
And we think that's because she probably has an agreement with Vitamin String. So, and because they're out actively touring, because Kay and I went and saw them in October, and they had shows all through the winter everywhere. So she probably has an agreement with them and would not or could not contractually give that to Candlelight Bridgerton. So those songs were
makes
absent.
sense to me.
Me too. And, I mean, it's definitely a business move, and it allows Vitamin String to still be attendable in a way where, I mean, I attended them and wanted to attend them simply because they were the originators. Yes, it's a cover, but they're the originating string quartet that created that music.
Yeah.
But Candlelight Bridgerton would not take away from that, because you could just tell the vibe was different. I mean, the quartet was really good, and they had been playing a long time together. You know that as well too. But it just wasn't the same. I very much noticed with Happier Than Ever, they played the first part so slow.
Yeah.
And I was like, because it's not one of my favorite songs.
No. And
I was like, ugh. And, Kay's like, I know. And I'm like, and they're even playing it slower. It's so depressing. And I totally get where Francesca says a song has to be played just the right way to have the right vibe. So,
but anyway, without further ado, are we going to add in, for those who don't want to listen to the book because they'd like to read it at some point themselves, I will put a timestamp in so that you can skip the book portion of the read through if you so choose to. So I will add that in.
Check the description. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll put it in.
Oh, yeah,
okay. I'll add it in here so that, skip to this part. I can never get it in exact science because with the editing, it's really hard to know how far it's going to go in, but I'll do my best. If you are wanting to skip book spoilers, please jump over to 33 minutes. Okay, so to give you the backstory of the carriage scene, Cressida had basically just outed herself as being Lady Whistledown to the Ton, very similar to how it happens in the TV series. But where this variates is
Colin goes to apologize to her at her house, and he sees her getting into a hired hack, and he follows her. Now, mind you, they are not married. This is prior to being married. In the book, it's different.
Curious as to where she was going in a hired hack, and he follows her for a great distance all the way into the city. And this man is outraged at this point. He is furious with her. Book Colin was way more possessive and controlling than what TV series Colin is, who is a little bit more sensitive,
and protective. I think Colin was supposed to be protective, but the way he was written in the book, his protectiveness came off as possessive and controlling. Yeah. You don't see it as protectiveness until after they're married, and you see it in future books, which is, what I loved. I think that as he was falling in love and as he was figuring himself out, it didn't translate well.
Yeah. And so Penelope goes all the way to a church. I can't remember the exact name of the church. It's a church for lovers, and Colin's like
writers. Yeah. It's a writers church.
But wasn't it also love in the name? The patron, but it was the patron of the patron church of writers, but it had something to do with love. And he goes, why would I need that? The whole time Colin was being entirely obstinate with her and really goading her. Like both of them knew their own feelings at that point for each other. But they didn't know each other's feelings, but they knew they both had feelings. But he was just so furious and he was just being so obstinate in this moment. And so he follows her to this church and he sees her leave a letter in a pew. And he goes and reads the letter thinking that she has a secret lover. So at this point, he is absolutely furious that she's come out. He's had feelings all this time and what an embarrassment. He thought that maybe it was mutual or something. And she tricked him into him kissing her, and all this time she's had a secret lover until he goes and reads the letter and realizes that she's Lady Whistledown. I feel like he was actually way more upset at the thought of her having a secret lover than her being Lady Whistledown. And I feel like he just absolutely, when you get so angry that even Saint Brides, there we go. Okay, so it was something to do with, and she goes, oh, this church is rather fitting that you're here. And he's like, why? Because I need a bride or something? And she's like, no, it's the patron church for writers. By that point, he was just, when you're so angry that you start just being obstinate, even when the fight is over, you can't get past your feelings of anger. And it's one of those times where you have to walk away and come back and reassess when you're not angry, because you know that you're just going to be an ass for the sake of being an ass. That is 100% what Colin has been doing in this scene. And Penelope and Colin are essentially fighting over the fact that she's Lady Whistledown and that she was going to out Cressida rather than letting Cressida take the fall for being Lady Whistledown. Now, the thing that really upsets me about this portion is because he's essentially saying Cressida can get away with being Lady Whistledown because she is popular, because she is pretty. Yeah. I'm just taking off for 1 second. Because she's popular and pretty and, she can get away with things that Penelope just can't. She's Cressida. You're, Penelope Featherington. It's different. So I really, really hate that, like, in the book, he had an entirely different perception of her, more in line with what the Ton thought of her as well. Whereas in the TV series, he thinks that she is sliced bread, better than sliced bread.
Yeah,
that's the way it should be.
She is his diamond of the season all the time. He does not understand. He doesn't see at first. He does not see how she's treated by the Ton. He does not see, that she is outcast or anything like that. He assumes it's because she's introverted.
Yeah. You
can tell, like, he believes her interaction and everything is her doing because she's introverted and quiet and shy. And the way the Ton treats her, he's just oblivious to that.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't see it. You can tell in episode 2, he does not understand how they could say the things they're saying about her. Like, what? And she runs off and he chases her. Like, he would have stood there and fought the whole room for her, but she ran off.
Get out his jousting sticks.
I think he would have done it bare knuckle. And I think that he would have been like, Benedict, Mondrich, and the three of them would have fought the whole room.
The Three Musketeers.
For real. And with his imagination and his storytelling nature, that's probably what he wrote down. Like, if you go back in the Collins journals and read how that ball ended, it was probably him dueling.
I kind of really want Alice to
Lady
be
Malhotra or something.
I actually really, really want Alice to be the granddaughter or the daughter, because that will kind of make that would make Will a Featherington bro, a Bridgerton bro, and they would all be Bridgerton bros. I mean, granted, they all have different last names, but they're all in spirit Bridgerton bros, and that would make I'm quite, even if it's more than 3, I'm just going to call them the Musketeers from now on. Because, we've got Don Quixote, and I feel like that kind of goes along with Don Quixote.
4.
There are 4 Musketeers, but once Anthony comes back, it's 5.
Because D'Artagnan, well, yes, there's 5, but we know that John is not hanging out.
He hung out in that scene, okay? I feel like it's kind of, if John had the right people, I think it's that when he's around the wrong people, he doesn't open up. But we saw how open he was with the Bridgerton Bro squad.
Yes, he very much is a Bridgerton Bro. What I'm saying is he's not in the 4 because he doesn't live.
Okay, thanks. Doesn't break my heart.
Philip jumps in. Philip jumps in later, but that's too far
for
off.
now. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So with prefacing all of
and
that,
Colin is definitely D'Artagnan.
Yeah.
Colin's so D'Artagnan.
with prefacing all of that, we are starting a little bit earlier in the book to kind of give a little bit of the vibe before we get into the nitty-gritty of the carriage scene. So they have been fighting, and I do mean fighting, and they've been very nastily quipping at each other. And book Penelope is so much softer than TV series Penelope. She is very well thought out, well, like slowly spoken, very gentle spirit. So for her to quip back at Colin, usually we don't even see her quipping back at her mother unless it's under her breath. And then her mother will be like, what was that? She'll be like, nothing, mother. I didn't say anything. Yes, of course you're right. You know, she's not she's not the snarky Penelope that we get with her family. But in this scene, she is, you know, and it hurts her to see Colin being so obstinate. So I'm going to start the reading and I will read halfway through, and then our lovely
I get the smut this time.
Patty is going to read this. Well, I'll be reading the smut in the TV series portion. So I thought it's only fitting for us both to be equal shades of red.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will start out. I thought you believed in me, she said, that you saw beyond the ugly duckling. Her face was so familiar to him. He'd seen it 1,000 times before, and yet, until these past few weeks, he couldn't have said he truly knew it. Would he have remembered that she had a small birthmark near her left earlobe? Had he ever noticed the warm glow to her skin, or that her brown eyes had flecks of gold in them right near the pupil? How had he danced with her so many times and never noticed that her mouth was full and wide and made for kissing? She licked her lips when she was nervous. He'd seen her do that just the other day. Surely she'd done that at some point in the dozen years of their acquaintance. And yet, it was only now that the mere sight of her tongue made his body clench with need. You're not ugly, he told her, his voice low and urgent. Her eyes widened and he whispered, you're beautiful. I think that line right there is exactly why people compare this to Howl's Moving Castle with Sophie, because he says the line exactly like that as well. Like, you have to watch the movie. Okay, I'll get back. You're beautiful. No, she said. The word barely more than a breath. Don't say things you don't mean. His fingers tug into her shoulders. You're beautiful, he repeated. I don't know how. I don't know when. He touched her lips, feeling her hot breath on his fingertips. But you are, he whispered. He leaned forward and kissed her, slowly, reverently. No longer quite so surprised that this was happening, that he wanted her so badly. The shock was gone, replaced by a simple, primitive need to claim her, to brand her, to mark her as his. His? He pulled back and looked at her for a moment, his eyes searching her face. Why not? What is it? She whispered. You are beautiful, he said, shaking his head in confusion. I don't know why nobody else sees it. Something warm and lovely began to spread in Penelope's chest. She couldn't quite explain it. It was almost as if someone had heated her blood. It started in her heart and then slowly swept through her arms, her belly, down to the tips of her toes. It made her lightheaded. It made her content. It made her whole. She wasn't beautiful. She knew she wasn't beautiful. She knew she'd never be more than just passably attractive, and that was only on her good days, but he thought she was beautiful, and when he looked at her, she felt beautiful, and she'd never felt that way before. He kissed her again, his lips hungrier this time, nibbling, caressing, waking her body, rousing her soul. Her belly had begun to tingle, and her skin felt hot and needy where his hands touched through the thin green fabric of her dress. And never once did she think, this is wrong. The kiss was everything she'd been brought up to fear and avoid, but she knew, body, mind, and soul, that nothing in her life had ever been so right. She had been born for this man, and she'd spent so many years trying to accept the fact that he had been born for someone else. To be proven wrong was the most exquisite pleasure imaginable. She wanted him. She wanted this. She wanted the way he made her feel. She wanted to be beautiful, even if it was only in one man's eyes. They were, she thought dreamily, as he laid her down on the plush cushion of the carriage bench, the only eyes that mattered. She loved him. She had always loved him. Even now, when he was so angry with her that she had barely recognized him, when he was so angry with her that she wasn't even sure she liked him, she loved him. And she wanted to be his. That the first time he had kissed her, she had accepted his advances with a passive delight. But this time, she was determined to be an active partner. She still couldn't quite believe that she was here with him. And she certainly wasn't ready to let herself dream that he might ever be kissing her on a regular basis. This might never happen again. She might never again feel the exquisite weight of him pressing against her, or the scandalous tickle of her tongue against hers. She had one chance, one shot, what an opportunity to capture it all.
First of all, you read the scandalous tickle of her tongue against hers.
So, like, wrong book. Against hers. My mind's going Eminem at this point. She had one chance to make a memory that would have to last a lifetime, one chance to reach for bliss. Tomorrow would be awful, knowing that he would find some other woman with whom to laugh and joke and even marry. But today was hers. And by God, was she going to make this a kiss to remember. She reached up and touched his hair. She was hesitant at first just because she was determined to be an active, willing partner. Didn't mean she had a clue what she was doing. His lips were slowly easing all of the reason and intelligence from her mind, but still, she couldn't quite help noticing that his hair felt exactly like Eloise's, which she had brushed countless times during their years of friendship, and heaven help her, she giggled.
That got his attention, and he lifted his head, his lips touched by an amused smile. I beg your pardon, he queried. She shook her head, trying to fight off her smile, knowing she was losing the battle. Oh no, you must, he insisted. I couldn't possibly continue without knowing the reason for the giggle. She felt her cheeks burning, which struck her as ridiculously ill-timed. Here she was, completely misbehaving in the back of a carriage, and it was only now that she had the decency to blush. Tell me, he murmured, nibbling at her ear. She shook her head. His lips found the exact point where her pulse beat in her throat. Tell me. All she could do was moan, arching her neck to give him greater access. Her dress, which she hadn't even realized had been partially unbuttoned, slid down until her collarbone was exposed, and she watched with giddy fascination as his lips traced the line of it until his entire face was nuzzled perilously close to her bosom. Will you let me? He whispered, grazing her skin. Oh, tell me, will you tell me? I'm thinking of show Colin, will you let me? Will you tell me? He whispered, grazing her skin with his teeth. Tell you what, she gasped. His lips were wicked, moving lower, then lower still. Why, you were laughing. For several seconds, Penelope couldn't even remember what he was talking about. His hand cupped her breast through her dress. I'll torment you until you tell me, he threatened. Penelope's answer was an arch of her back, settling her breast even more firmly in his grasp. She liked torment. I see, he murmured, simultaneously sliding her bodice down and moving his hand so that his palm grazed her nipple. Then perhaps I'll... His hand stilled, then lift. Stop. No, she moaned. Then tell me. She stared at her breast, mesmerized by the sight of it, bare and open to his gaze. Tell me, he whispered, blowing softly so that his breath brushed across her. Something clenched inside Penelope, deep inside of her, in places that were never talked. She begged. He smiled, slow and lazy, satisfied and still somehow hungry. What? She whispered. His index finger slid along her shoulder. Here. She shook her head frantic, trailed down the column of her neck. Am I getting closer? She nodded, her eyes never leaving her breast. He found her nipple again, his fingers tracing slow, tantalizing spirals around it, then on it. And all the while she watched, her body growing tighter and tighter, and all she could hear was her breath, hot, heavy from her lips. Then, Colin. His name flew from her mouth in a strange gasp. Surely he couldn't. His lips closed around her, and before she'd even felt more than the heat of him, she bucked off the bench in surprise, her hips pressing shamelessly against his, then settling back down as he ground against her, holding her immobile as he pleasured her. Oh, Colin, she gasped, her hands flying around to his back, pressing desperately into his muscle, wanting nothing other than to hold him and keep him and never let him go. He yanked at his shirt, pulling it free from the waist of his breeches, as she followed his cue by slipping her hands under the fabric and running them along the hot skin of his back. She'd never touched a man this way. She'd never touched anyone like this, except maybe herself. And even then, it wasn't like she could easily reach her own back. He groaned when she touched him, then tensed when her fingers skimmed along his skin. Her heart leaped. He liked the way she was touching him. She hadn't the least clue what to do with herself, but he liked it just the same. "Oh, perfect," he whispered against her, his lips blazing a trail back up to the underside of her chin. His mouth claimed hers again, this time with increased fervor, and his hand slid underneath to cup her derriere, squeezing and kneading and pressing her up against his arousal. "My God, I want you," he gasped, grinding his hips down. "I want to strip you bare and sink into you and never let you go." Penelope groaned with desire, unable to believe how much pleasure she could feel from mere word. He made her feel wicked, naughty, oh so desirable, and she never wanted it to end. "Oh, Penelope," he was groaning, his lips and hands growing more frantic. "Oh, Penelope. Oh, Penelope. Oh," he lifted his head, very abrupt. "Oh, God. What is it?" she asked, trying to lift the back of her head from the cushion. "We've stopped." It took her a moment to recognize the import of this. If they'd stopped, that meant they'd most likely reach their destination, which was her home. "Oh, God." She started yanking at the bodice of her gown with frantic motions. "Can't we ask the driver to keep on going?" She'd already proven herself a complete wanton. There seemed little harm at this point in adding shameless to her list of behaviors. He grabbed the bodice for her and hauled it into place. "What is the possibility your mother won't have noticed my carriage in front of your house yet?" "Fairly good, actually," she said. "But Brierly will have done." "Your butler will recognize my carriage?" he asked in disbelief. She nodded. "You came the other day." He always remembers things like that. His lips twisted in a grimly determined manner. "Very well, then," he said. "Make yourself presentable." "I can race up to my room," Penelope said. "No one will see me." "I doubt that," he said ominously, tucking in his shirt and smoothing his hair. "No, I assure you." "And I assure you," he said, leaping on top of her words, "you will be seen." He licked his fingers, then ran them through his hair. "Do I look presentable?" "Yes," she lied. In truth, he looked rather flushed, with swollen lips and hair that didn't remotely adhere to a current style. "Good." He hopped down from the carriage and held his hand out to her. "You're coming in as well?" she asked. He looked at her as if she'd suddenly gone daft. "Of course." She didn't move, too perplexed by his actions to give her legs the orders to step down. There was certainly no reason he had to accompany her inside. Propriety didn't really demand it. "And for God's sake, Penelope," he said, grabbing her hand and yanking her down, "are you going to marry me or not?"
Yay! I know that we said we wouldn't read this, but I just want to literally read this one line. "She hit the pavement." She was so shocked in the book that she stumbled out of the carriage and face planted. I actually kind of wish that they had kept that in because it was hilarious, but I think they were going for more of a romancy, like startled, shocked kind of thing rather than like awkwardly clumsy.
Yeah, they didn't really give Penelope too much clumsy. But yeah, I wish they would have had that. And it would have worked still in the scene because I mean, she had just gotten the great O. Okay, she had reached the land of Oz. So for her to step out of the carriage at that moment, she would have been a little weak-kneed. I think it still could have worked, even if they weren't having, angry Colin who's figured out he's gonna marry her, yanking her out of the carriage, like, catch the clue train, little girl. Like something, like he's just so in disbelief that she's not like the other women of the ton, though, who would have dragged him to their mother.
Yeah.
Right? She's still trying to protect him and save him, and he's not understanding it at all. She's not acting like the women that he knows in the ton. Mm-hmm. So he's just like yanking her along. Like, what are you doing? Like, most women would be dragging me up to their mother. Like, I don't understand this.
But I think that's it. Even though book and TV Penelope and Colin are pretty drastically different, I think a lot of the feelings that they are feeling are quite similar, as in this kind of gives us a real inside sight into what Penelope was feeling in this moment, that as she said, she didn't have the audacity to think that Colin would ever be kissing her like this ever again. And she
on
was
a regular basis.
On a regular basis. So she was going to make this night count. Or in the famous words of Pitbull, give me everything tonight.
Yeah.
It's all we know.
For all I know,
we might not get
have
tomorrow.
tomorrows.
Just give me tonight.
Let's do it tonight.
Yeah. Dun, dun, dun.
That's
dun,
straight
dun,
up
dun,
Penelope.
dun, dun.
That is book Penelope's thoughts. So that is why Pitbull fits so well, because it tells you the whole time, even though you think they've both said these words and they both are on the same page, the background music tells you that she still is like, this is a right now thing. She still, in a way, thinks Colin said what he said to be kind, to be nice.
And I do think that Portia has taught those girls, like she has taught them to be very weary of everything. And so I think she would have 100% taught them, as probably most young girls of the time, that men will say anything to get, I mean, we hear her having the conversation with Marina in season 1.
We hear our own mothers say it.
Yes.
Men will say anything to get
you
what
in
they
bed.
want in the moment. Yeah.
And it is true.
You have a prince at night in the bedroom and there's so much a frog the next day. They are flowery words and poetry in the dark, and their devaluation and demeaning in the light.
So I think that Penelope could have even thought, well, you know, he's still a man at the end of the day, and he's just doing what he needs to do to enjoy some time.
Well, and I don't think he's just trying to get laid, and I think she knows that too. But we got to remember how she describes him when she's describing him as the man she loves. She says, you know, occasionally excitable. I think she believes this is one of his occasionally excitable moments, that he's caught up in the moment and he saw his friend get hurt. He saw his friend get rejected, and he's decided he's going to fall on the sword for her. He's going to step up and he's going to, you know, be the person who courts her to save her reputation.
We did have that happen in one of the Rokesby books that with Georgiana. Someone makes up rumors about her, and so one of the Bridgerton boys marries her to save her reputation. And it turns out he did actually love her. He just didn't know what that feeling was. So it kind of is, in a way, quite similar to how this is playing out.
Yeah. So, and they might have taken that idea from that book, because we don't know if we're going to get that story or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, they bought the rights to the whole Bridgerton universe.
Yes.
To be able to pull in characters as needed. That's why we have Emma Kenworthy, because the Kenworthys are in, I can't remember if it's the Rokesbys or the Smythe-Smith books.
No, Smythe-Smith, because Smythe-Smith run parallel to the Bridgerton series.
Yeah, but the Kenworthys are mentioned in one of them. So, Emma Kenworthy kind of is born of that, because they bought the rights to the whole thing. So they might have used that storyline a little bit, since they were changing so much of Romancing Mr. Bridgerton to fit the show narrative they've already created. They might have borrowed some things from other books, because we truly, as Romancing Mr. Bridgerton fans, we did not get a lot of the book trajectory. We did not get a lot of the book scenes verbatim, word for word. What we got were moments. And even in the press tour, they never said that we were getting, you know, the equivalent of the book. They always said fans are looking for these moments.
Yes.
And we've recreated these moments. So they acknowledged
they were subliminally preparing us for moments to be a thing before it was even a thing. I do wonder whether they actually knew about it, and that's why they kept using that word.
Well, and I believe that a lot of press, I think even a lot of interviews, because I noticed today I was watching an interview where Nicola was interviewed, because, you know, the Screen Actors Guild Awards are coming up and she was nominated. So it was like an actress roundtable with her, watching her kind of fangirl, because Kathy Bates says, like, she watched her in Bridgerton and she resonated with Miss Featherington because of being a wallflower and everything. Nicola's tripping over her words, just so in awe that Kathy Bates liked her work. It was so sweet. And then
I feel like Nicola's very humble.
Yes, but then watching Kathy Bates is just a good human being. I love her. And like, Kathy Bates, if you ever listen to podcast, I love you very much. She knew she was the older, experienced actress on the block, that she had already probably known that these actresses had looked up to her or whatever, and she wanted to make them feel like they belonged in the space and they were all together, and she was there to learn from them. She asked them questions where, you know, she wanted to know about their training, and she wanted to know how that resonated, because obviously she trained a long time ago, and her and Nicola actually got into a little back and forth about how you're always learning. And that's like one of the best things about the craft they chose, the career they chose, is that they're always learning. They get to always learn something new to put in their toolkit. And just watching like Kathy Bates, like allowing them the space to be like, you belong here. You know, it was so beautiful. I love those actors roundtables. I watch all of them for every award show, but that one I'm like, I want to see Nicola and Kathy Bates in a room together, because they were doing it via Zoom because of all of their different things. But like, if they could be in a room together doing a roundtable, I would love it so much. But it was so awesome to see. And I don't know how we tangented off on that. So we'll have to you'll have to swing us back.
Okay. So I think it started with Pitbull, and then it went somewhere, and then it went somewhere else, and then it went somewhere else, and then it's coming back to Pitbull. So
we can always circle back to Pitbull. Take it back to Pitbull.
Yes. Mr. Wellby, bring it back around. I feel like he honestly, like when I first heard it, it was a questionable but exquisite choice. I think this is probably one of their, in top kind of 5 song choices of the entire series for how it fit the scene so perfectly, and it just sounds spectacular.
And I'm going to say this. I don't know if you were trying to be humble, Jess Brownell. I don't know if that was really the case, that you wanted this song in there, but you didn't remember choosing it until later and you saw it. But to me, that was the most disingenuous thing to say in an interview when they're asking about the music, and she's just like, oh yeah, I think I picked that one, but I don't remember why I wanted that song. And it's the one that fits it is the most iconic song for the scene. And to just throw it away like that, like own your stuff, girl. Like, if this was your choice and you wanted this song for this particular scene for whatever reason, own that shit. Say it. Like, I picked this song, I wanted it for this scene, this is why, I think it was this, I think it was that. Don't be like, yeah, I think I picked that. Like, own it.
Yeah,
I would have way more respect for you.
Yeah. I like, because I love going back and how did I get onto the sex scene in episode 5? I didn't even Netflix, I literally left.
Netflix just does it. Netflix pulls up the sex scenes, the spicy scenes.
I kid you not, I was literally just editing, watching through episode 4, finishing up my notes, and I've just opened Netflix and it's on the sex scene in episode 5.
That's just Colin and Penn going, oh, are you talking about our sexual relationship?
No, stop skipping to that episode. I'm trying to watch episode 4. Stop it.
That's priceless.
Netflix, you've really got a mind of your own.
Netflix be smutting the smut.
Okay, so where we left off in our previous episode was Penn says with a heaved breath that I'd very much like to be more than friends, so much more. And the way she says so much more was almost a permission in itself. I think
it was.
Colin knows how to read the room. And
she was like, if you didn't catch what I said and I want to be more than friends, I'm going to tell you, wink, wink, wink. Yeah. I want to be so much more than friends. And I think honestly, because she doesn't think that this is going to go beyond tonight, I think she was telling him, like, I will take it all the way. Like, I want a big memory. I want a memory of you forever and all time. Because just like in the story where it says, we're going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to watch him go off and laugh and love and be born for another person. I'm going to squeeze as much joy out of tonight as I can, basically. That I think that's her moment of that, where she's just going to, she's telling him, like, you can do what you want. I want it all.
I love that we have Pitbull's Give Me Everything start here, and it really starts hitting the crescendo. Penelope says so much more, and he starts to close the distance, and they get to, about 2 inches away from. He stops. It's like, well, firstly,
that's my
it's
first
a permission thing. It's a permission thing. He wants, like, I've come all this way. You need to finish closing that gap. And it's like, I think it was also a savoring the moment. In How I Met Your Mother, there's a certain episode where they attend a wedding and Ted meets one of his future major love interests that he nearly marries, called Victoria. And she said, you know what's even better than the kiss is the moment before the kiss, the lead up to the kiss. She said the kiss is great, but she said it's that moment that I live for. And she's like, I want a moment to remember for the rest of my life that no matter what happens in my life, no matter who I marry, I want to look back on a night and remember pure perfection. So I don't want us to kiss. We're not going to kiss. We're going to do everything up until the moment, and then I'm going to walk away, and we're going to have the rest of our lives to remember this perfect moment. And this is almost like that moment where you've waited for this kiss for so long, and the anticipation is so high that you just want to revel in it just a little bit longer.
Yeah.
That anticipation just about gets you to the peak itself. And so they both...
Well, and for him, because Colin can't take for himself first. Like, he can't put himself first. So he comes all that way. He leans in like, okay, she wants so much more. And he leans in like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is it. And like, in his head, he's like, this is it. Wait. Like, I'm giving her that one last chance, right? And she closes distance. Like, that's my first note. She takes the last step. He is giving her control because he also is in. These are two people in this moment that are like, I can't believe this person wants, right? So they're both going into this, like, kind of doing this dance of, I'm going to give them a minute. If they're not wanting to cross this next line, I'm going to give them a pause. I'm going to give them a pause, but they keep meeting each other. And it's gorgeous.
I love the little pauses where they don't even lean back. They're still like very much within each other's space. Like within
I have 4 notes about that very moment. So so say your piece, because
Colin gives pauses between kisses, almost to allow Penelope the time and space to ask if she wants to continue, but also so that he can look into her eyes and realize that this is really happening. Like, he has to open his eyes. He has to make sure this isn't just another dream.
Yes, that's because I was like, okay, so the first part of the kiss, when they finally connect, it's so long, right? That lips touching is so long. It's like they don't want to separate their lips.
Mm-hmm.
And then they both move to breathe. And now there's more movement in their kiss, but it still seems very slow and dreamlike. And then when they separate to look at each other, Pen's eyes are wide open immediately. Mm-hmm. She has to see to believe this is happening. But Colin keeps his eyes closed just a beat longer because he is afraid it's all a dream. And the best thing for me in this moment is when they separate to look at each other, her nose slides up the underside of his nose.
Yes, I was just watching that.
And like, for me, in a world where like when people are first kissing and you're trying to figure out your motions and your noses bump, like this tells me Colin and Penelope were meant to be kissing each other. They had no trouble figuring out they could caress each other even with their noses. Like, to me, it's the most romantic thing. Like, I can't get over that. It's perfect.
All Steven's going to hear from the other room is dun, 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 dun. Literally repeat.
Yeah, like that for me, like they're separating, but that whole piece is beautiful. It's she caressing her nose up his, like she's letting him know, I'm pulling away, that I have to look at you. And like, but he holds on for just a breath. Like it. Please be real. Please be real. Please be real.
It's almost as if she is pulling away, but she is unwilling to give up even that slightest touch of connection.
Yes.
And it's like, I'm going to hold that connection for as long as I physically can. You are so
such
true.
A gorgeous little moment.
Vulnerable and sweet. Oh, yes. Like this whole scene, like the anticipation.
And honestly, okay, for all the press tour, I'm going to say this, like if Nicola and Luke ever listen to this podcast, I don't know if they listen to their other ones, but if they ever listen to this podcast, because they always question, like, you know, how Luke was like, I wonder how many times the people played just that scene. Like, if you're wanting to know the mindset behind why this scene is so watchable, it's not necessarily the spice.
It's the connection.
All these it's these little moments like this, like that little 5-second moment or whatever it is just perfect. And it says so much about them in just a few moments. Like, they don't even, like, from the first kiss, like they meet in the middle and connect, and they can't let their lips go. Like, the kiss doesn't go anywhere. They're just pressed against each other.
She is basked in light. He is the moonlight.
He's in shadow,
trying to soak in her light.
Yeah, he's like a Dementor.
Hey, excuse me.
I'm I mean, yes, a Dementor is a bad thing, but
I'm
that's
sure
the
that
visual
he
I
wouldn't
have where
mind
the
a little.
Dementors are sucking.
I'm sure he
sucking
wouldn't
the
mind
life out
a
of
little of that, but that is not the vibe right now, Patty.
I know it's not the vibe, but it's the visual for me. How the Dementors like suck the joy out of you, kind of like her light. Like he's pulling her, he's basking in her light, and that you always see this throughout the show. Like every time he has to hold her hand, like in the garden apology scene where he holds her hand, he's got to get some of her warmth. He's got to get some of her light. Like he's even though we always equate her to the sunflower and the sunflower has to follow the sun, like he's truly the sunflower and she is the sun. Like he's got to gain light from her. It's just so like, I love the light in this. And I will say this, like we always give flowers where flowers are due. If you have never seen the YouTube video that Sammy Bates did breaking down this scene, like I won't even discuss the lighting because she did such an amazing job discussing the lighting and how it plays into the scene. And how like when he first gets in and he realizes like he knows his feelings and he knows what is coming, he's lit by the torchlight. So he's in light and she's in shadow. Yeah, like it just the slut. Quit showing me the pictures.
But like I haven't actually.
But so go watch Sammy Bates's whole analysis of the scene. She breaks down the lighting so well. It's amazing.
Like this moment where I forget that our viewers or our listeners can't actually see the video, but the scene where Penelope is running her hand through Colin's hair. He is then absolutely like basked in her sunlight.
Yeah, and I say like he is so in awe of the fact that she feels the same way. Like he is awestruck by her in that moment. Absolutely. That first look, he is completely awestruck. Like she's touching him.
She is a goddess.
Him.
Like I am so lucky to have the attention of a goddess giving me attention. I'm just a mere peasant.
And with like I mean, think of the sirens in the Odyssey. Like he is caught in her spell. Like she is a siren, and that's in the book. Like he calls her a siren in the book. And that first look is all of that. But it just cracks me up. Like when she goes back and she touches his hair. Mm-hmm. And that slutty look he gives to me, that's like the hair. You know what I mean? Like it's this. Oh, she likes my hair. Like. He just gets this like surge of confidence almost in that moment. Like, yeah, she thinks I'm sexy too. But then the look of satisfaction on her face because she saw the change in expression for him. Like she felt so powerful in that moment. Like all I did was touch his hair. Look at that face. Like
I wrote, Pen's hands are tracing the contours of his body. Free from the constraint, she can finally touch him in all the ways she's ever dreamed of. Her hand traces over his chest, grazes past his face. Colin isn't in heaven. I don't think he has ever felt so much from such little touch. And when she gets to the back of his head, running her fingers through his hair, she gives a slight tug. The cheeky look on his face in that moment tells us that he knows that she is cheekier than she looks, and he is going to enjoy himself very.
Yeah. And I think like
this is going to be a good match.
Yeah, like he's like, okay,
I can work with this.
She still wants to be taught. Yeah. Yes. We're going to have that kind of relationship. That's great. She's willing to try things.
She's not going to be just a submissive partner. Like, I think...
Yeah, she's like, not vanilla.
When you look at the Lord Danburys all the way through to the Michael and Francesca's, like, this is still for that time period, not for now's time period. I mean, let's be honest, we're just all heathens now. But for that time period, to like
we really are like I got a pictogram drawing of mechanics last night when we were recording the YouTube video. That was hilarious.
Do I still have
tutorials by Tosh?
I was like, is my husband
has Steven found that picture yet?
I think I folded it up so he wouldn't walk in to see a picture of a couch with
a stick figure with a very prominent. That's hilarious.
I channeled my inner Danbury to give a visual demonstration. No charcoals were harmed in the making of this demonstration.
That is so funny. What I love about this whole next sequence is, so she tugs on his hair a little bit and he's like, yeah, chicks dig the hair. And she does her little moment of power, like, ooh, he liked that. Like, yeah, I am in control here. She pulls him in for that next kiss. Mm-hmm. She pulls him in, but he takes over. Like in the book where it says he wants to possess her, this is that moment because he pushes her into the back of the seat. You know, he's fully on top of her, basically as on top as you can get on your knees. Yes. There. Well, he's completely taking over.
This is that scene from the book where it says like he is grinding himself into her.
Yeah, but it's also that earlier part where he's thinking like he wants to possess her and make her his. Like he's making her his there. Like he grabs at her hip and he's holding on to her hip, but she's doing the same thing. She's not letting him go. She gave permission for this by pulling him in.
She might never again feel the exquisite weight of him pressing against her. Yeah. That line. It is that line. Like, I feel like we can actually go through. This is one of the scenes where we can go through book to series and compare, and it is almost all there.
Yeah, and it's like he's taking possession of her, and, you know, he's got her pushed back against the carriage. She can't go anywhere. His hands are on her hips, like, but she's not wanting him to go anywhere. She's grabbed his arm and is pulling his, like, the back of his arm. She's grabbed his face, like she's holding his face and kissing him. She's grabbed his coat, the lapel of his coat, and pulls him towards her. Mm-hmm. She is like, take me. Like, I want to be yours. Like that same part of the book where she says she wants to be his. These are those two lines. He is taking possession of her to make her his. And she's saying, yes, I want to be his. Like, this is that whole moment. And it's like so amazingly done because you can just see how much they want each other and they don't want to be separated. They are like when you think about like two planets, like how the Earth got the moon, you know, stuff flew around and collided with each other, and then, you know, things are attracted to each other and they spin and they collect, magnetic, and then you have the Earth, the moon.
A gravitational pull.
Yes, like they're so close now. They are so close in proximity. They can't deny it. They can't be separated. They will never separate again. They are just connected.
Well, I wrote, Colin looks absolutely feral for Penelope. I don't think he realized that he could feel so much desire and passion for someone, and after being pent up for all these weeks, it is finally bursting forth. The kisses are somehow both incredibly sweet and tender, whilst also being hungry for more. So much more.
Yeah, like, and I can get where, you know, the director has to remind her, hey, you're not supposed to know how to kiss or whatever. But I honestly think that when you've never kissed someone before, if you're kissing somebody that you're meant to, it seems very natural.
Well, I think this is something that has been pent up for so long. And I think we underestimate that it is a natural human instinct within us all. Is it meant to look so good? Well, I mean, it may not look good so good if the chemistry and passion isn't there. I think Luke
honestly,
Newton,
like what they said, they were doing a lot of kissing stuff that didn't look beautiful on camera. But I don't think true, honest kissing, it feels beautiful, but it doesn't look good. Like some of the best kissing is not pretty.
Yeah. I honestly think that Luke and Nicola have incredible off the charts chemistry. And when people say that they don't, I'm like, have you watched this scene? What are you even talking about?
No, even the people who did watch this scene.
If there was any more chemistry on that bloody carriage seat, I would be pregnant right now, okay? He would have impregnated me from the screen, okay?
From the screen.
There was chemistry.
And considering, what's funny is considering when they filmed it compared to when we saw it. Like, they have so much chemistry. We would have popped out babies and not realized how we got pregnant until the show aired.
And then all of our babies come out looking like Colin Bridgerton.
Like Colin Bridgerton, right? Like, so in like August or September of,
you know what? I actually
2022
wonder,
or whenever they were filming. You know,
I wonder.
My ovaries clench, like, what's going on? And then the show is, that must have been when they were recording the scene.
Do you think that if they looked at the statistics of exactly 9 months from the tie?
Oh, we got Colin blocked.
We got Colin blocked.
Stop it.
No chocolate in here, darling.
Lisa, stop it in my bummy.
I can smell that.
Have I distracted him the first time from coming in here?
What exciting thing would you like to go do with Daddy? Are you going to build a fort?
No.
Yeah, so if this aired May 16th, what's 9 months from May 16th?
Let's have a look.
40 weeks. We need 40 weeks.
40
right?
weeks. May. Okay.
We're about there. There's
3,
about to be
4,
a bunch
5,
of babies
6,
being born
7,
soon.
8. 40 weeks will be about mid to late February. So
yeah.
any
so
listeners
there's
out
probably
there
a lot of Polin babies being born this month.
Well, I would say February, March is going to probably see a spike because obviously part 1, part 2. But I think the carriage scene is going to be the big one.
Like seriously, listeners, throw it in the Facebook group, comment on this podcast, however you got to get a hold of us. Do you know anyone who's having a baby this month or next month?
But I do actually wonder, because they had such large numbers and that scene was everything. I do actually wonder whether on a national level it's going to cause a spike.
In the main Bridgerton group, like how many people?
How many times have you? How many times have you had?
Month?
How many times did you have sex watching the carriage scene?
No, like how many Bridgerton fans are expecting a child this month or next month? Like February, March, I'd even say into April, because some people don't get to watch it right away. It's the end of school, family vacations.
Well, so let's say because you went through and watched part 1 and then, okay, part 2 is coming out. I'm going to rewatch it all again.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying though. Like even by June, some people were going to wait till June and watch it all together. But then you have the end of school, family vacations and whatever, and you're with your kids. So you can't really watch it. So maybe they didn't get to watch it until early July. So I'd even say, going into April, if you're expecting February, March, or April, do you think you conceived to the carriage scene, to the mirror scene? You know what I mean? Like,
and honestly, when people say that Colin pulled a dumpy face or a weird face or whatever, when we are in the mood, we don't care what kind of face we are pulling. We are feeling every moment of it. And to me, that face is just pure ecstasy of just disbelief that this is finally happening, that not only is it happening, but it is good. Because, as we all know, we've all had
that plays into my canon that he has loved her all this time, because he just was always in so much disbelief that she would feel the same things for him, because he's had her on this pedestal. He's had her at this level. Like, she is just too good. She is purity. She is light. She is all these things. And he could not believe that she would love him. So he didn't even try. And in that moment, he's getting everything he ever wanted. She wants me too. And he's awestruck. He is flabbergasted, but it's so good in all of the most delicious ways. Like, that look is perfection to me.
Because even in today's society, we have the whole concern of, having sex before marriage, because what happens if you don't work that way? You might be good friends, kind of like what they're alluding to with John and Francesca, that maybe Francesca was expecting more feeling when they kiss. And I think she's also putting a lot of pressure on it for the fact that she's a little ball of nervous energy, and having to do something that was private. And as you said, people were not expected to kiss on the altar back then. It was actually quite, and not that they were in a public space, like they were for Colin and Penelope.
It was not a norm at that time.
And so to do it,
you could not have physical intimacy in public. So
and so to do it in front of your whole family when she's already a little ball of nervous energy and very, very likely on the spectrum, very likely on the spectrum, to do that in front of everyone, it puts a lot of pressure. Whereas how you were intimate in front of people and how you were intimate when you are on your own are two different things. And so I think this moment for Colin is the realization that, yes, there are feelings involved. Yes, we have this emotional connection, but oh my God, the physical connection is fantastic. And we just work and we fit, and all of those feelings that we feel are translated into pure passion for each other.
Well, yeah. And this is the moment, I've said this before, this is the moment too. Every experience he's had up to this point has been with paid women. Sure, yes, we've heard about the Contessa. We don't know much about her, whether she's a story made up for the icky guys or whether she's a small moment.
The icky dicky squad.
Yeah, the icky dickies. Or she's a small moment of his life that he's built up. Be able to talk about something without feeling like betraying a confidence or whatever, his own confidence, her confidence and whatnot. Or even if he took a moment with a paid worker and turned her into a Contessa, because he is a writer. So he wants to be able to have a story to kind of wink, wink, nudge, nudge with the guys to feel like he fits in. So I don't know if that's all totally truthful, but every encounter he'd had up until this moment has been with someone who was giving him attention, doing these things mechanically because they're paid to do it or they're in that sort of situation. There was no feeling, there was no passion, and he knew there was something missing. He knew the mechanics of everything, but he didn't fully understand the real passionate connection. He knew there was something missing. And here in this moment, as she slides up across his jaw and into his hair, like he's just like, oh, that's what was missing. This is what was missing. This is what it's supposed to be like.
It's that feeling of every single spot that they touch, raise, feels like it leaves that trace of fire upon your skin.
It becomes the most important part of your body in that moment. Wherever their hand is, that regardless of how little you think about that particular body part in that moment, like we all have we have the 7 zones, right? If you want to go friends, right? There's the 7 spots, right? A 1, a little 2, a 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3. You know that scene, Monica, yes, right? Yeah, 7. Yes, we all have those zones. But when you're with that person that you feel so much for, and you're feeling their vibe back, like even if a touch of your side, or when you're standing in a room and they touch the small of your back, like they just, they're like leading you out. Like the small of your back is something you probably haven't thought about all day, but now it's on fire and it's warm and you can't stop thinking about the small of your back for the next 10, 15 minutes because you still feel their hand there. It still feels so like intimate. And
I feel like the best sex that I say we as the collective, I'm not saying I have orgies, I'm saying like this is how I feel, and I'm sure this is how other people feel as well. But for a lot of women out there, and men ask, why do mums not feel in the mood or whatever? But the best time for me is where you have those little moments of connection throughout the day, and it's almost like a foreplay in itself, but it's not sexual per se. It is the holding the hand when out in public. It is, you look beautiful today. It is, a little stroke of the cheek or a little squeeze of the derriere as walking past. It's I notice you, I see you. It's foreplay. It really is. And it's when we
foreplay doesn't start when you close the bedroom door.
No.
Foreplay it's all the time. It's a look. It's like you're sitting there and you could be, because I did them today, you could be doing your taxes and you just look up and they're say drinking their coffee or whatever and they're just gazing at you over the cup.
Give you a cheeky look.
And it's like, I see you. Okay. I'm going to go back to looking at what our tax return is going to look like now, but you smile to yourself a little bit and you're thinking, I know what he's thinking about, right? And it's just all that little, it's the anticipation, it's the buildup. It's when
you know each other so well, you know it's coming. Like for the last 2 days, I've had a house guest, and throughout the day, like I'll feel Stephen's, like it won't just be like a touch to the back, it'll be like a caress, and I'm like, sir, don't even start that. Like we have guests, sir, behave. But that is what this is. They have had the first time, like that first time is completely different because it is not those little moments, because obviously they can't have those physical moments leading up until this. So for them, it has been a purely emotional foreplay that they have had all the way up until this moment. And it is now hitting the precipice. And this is the moment where Colin finally gets to unravel his present, and he pulls down the sleeve of her dress, one shoulder exposed, just like his favorite goddess, Aphrodite. Penelope is his goddess. He is kissing her neck whilst his hand cups her breast, teeth grazing tender path down to her breast. This is the best feast he has ever had.
She went from siren to goddess to pastry in 2.5. Like you see that whole trajectory, like he's gazing at her like she's a siren. I am so drawn to her. And then she pulls him in and he, pushes her back. They kiss, he pulls down the shoulder of her dress, and the look on her face, she's just like, oh my gosh, how scandalous. It's just my shoulder. But I feel so that moment in the book where she goes, she felt wicked, that she feels wicked, like her shoulder is exposed. Like, oh my gosh.
And that moment of first feeling desirable is healing in itself, when you have all these insecurities in yourself, and then you get to see yourself through someone's eyes, and the desire that they feel in enjoying you.
Yes, because she looks at her shoulder, and then she looks at him, and she sees his face, and she's awestruck in that moment. Like, he wants me.
Yes.
Like, he wants this. Like, how can a shoulder, and this is what tells me that little scene where he opens the door and she's in that nightgown after they're married, like, and her shoulders exposed. I think her and Ray planned that. Like, she was trying to seduce her husband and didn't know how, because of this moment, because she looks at her shoulder, she looks at him like, really? My shoulder? Like my shoulder?
The feast is ready, sir.
Yeah. And she's so in disbelief. And then when he cups her breast and she puts her hand on it, like, I've been that girl. She looks down and she's going, Colin Bridgerton's breast. Colin Bridgerton's hand is on my breast. Like, been there. Like, that person, you imagined it and imagined it and imagined it and imagined it. And now it's happening, and you're like, like, you can't believe it. Like, I love that when that moment played so much. I was like, oh my, like, that's perfect. She played it perfect. Like, he's just all it, like, he's all in. Knee deep. He's knee deep in the Yiddy buffet. Like, I've always said, he's belly up to the Yiddy buffet here. Like, he doesn't know what to do with it all, but he's like, I'm gonna try. And he's going to town, and she is just like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. She's in her head for a moment. She's not enjoying it yet, but you can tell when she gets into it, because and there's a part with him later in the scene,
there comes a sudden moment where you can no longer, and she even says it, like, he's kissing away all reason,
Yeah. But when his hand starts moving, her hand goes with him, because she's maintaining that connection. She doesn't need to have her hand on own breast. She's following his hand. It's
feeling what he's feeling.
That's instinctual. That's animal. Like, she's in the moment finally. That's when she comes out of her head and she's in the moment, because she looks down at his hand on her breast, and you can tell she's just in her head. And then she gets back into it, and as his hand slides, her hand goes with, and it's like, girl's in it now. She's in it.
And then they pull away from a moment to gaze at each other, wordlessly deciding whether to continue. Without even a nod of a head, they both know that they are unwilling to let each other go, or let go of the moment just yet. Colin slides his hand below Penelope's hemline and starts.
Wait. Before you get there, I got to acknowledge this one thing. So when he's kissing her neck and her chest, and his hand goes to her breast, and she's looking, like, it's that moment, she's like, oh my God. But then she nudges him with her chin. Like, I must have connection. Like, she's got the power. She's like, you're kissing me right now. Like, I love what you're doing, but I need your lips on mine right now. And that's her most powerful moment. Like, you see, she asks and he answered, right? Like, and it's almost, for her, it's not an ask, it's a demand. Like, she just nudges his face with her chin. Yeah, she nudges his face with her chin. Like, sorry to interrupt you, but I'm like, I can't let this part go past and forget to mention that. Like, I love that moment so much for her, because she's being assertive, and she's letting him know what she wants. And they communicate so well physically. Like, they've always communicated, and they could have a whole conversation with their eyes and never say two words to each other. But here they are doing the exact same thing physically, like, no words at all. But you hear the conversation, right? Like, you hear what they're saying to each other, but they say nothing.
Sorry, I was distracting watching that scene. I will never, ever, ever tire of rewatching this scene.
Nope.
And they are so close that they are able to communicate highly without words. Like, even just the tiniest gesture, they are so used to reading each other that her body language gives him all of the permission that he needs. He knows, he knows exactly if she were not into this, or if she were having regrets, or if she slowed down even a little, he would question immediately, but he knows that she is all in. I don't know why you're jumping up and down. Don't get too excited there, Patty.
No, there's something on my screen. I thought it was on your face, but it's not. It's on my screen.
glad. Colin slides his hand below Penelope's hem and starts to caress his hand along her exposed leg. He then looks up at her, searching whether to. Pen looks both scared but also excited and encourages him to continue.
She just nods wordlessly, silently. Her mouth is open like, yes. I don't know what you're asking, but yes.
Everything. The song says it all. The song says everything that he needs.
Like, she's just like, I don't know what you're asking. I just know you're asking. And I'm just saying, yes, I'm all in. I'm there. Like, well, let's do it.
This moment is where the cheeks are gonna start become red. Colin stops Pen as he traces his fingers higher up her inner thigh, eventually finding his place. Colin is not Pen in this moment. He's enwrapped, watching the pleasure that he is giving her, soaking in every moan and every visceral reaction of her body, heaving with desire. Her moans pull her closer and faces nearly touching. I meant to write, he sucks on her bottom lip as her moans are taking her closer to the edge. Eventually, the desire to have his mouth on hers takes a hold again, and they rejoin in a passion as he continues to bring her closer to her condo.
Yes. Like, are you writing your own smut book? You're like, well,
this whole what I love about here that I've written is basically a smut book.
Yeah, this whole part I love because from the book Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, when they're actually in their first time scene, it's in the dark. And he is like, they're doing this very thing. And she's making noises that he's like wishing there was light and he could see her face. And he's like, I will someday, I will see her face and I will watch her reaction. Yes. And for me, my little Polin heart got to watch Colin, watch Pen be this,
watching
like,
me,
feel
watching
him
her
for the first time. Yeah, he got to watch her reaction. He got to watch her succumb to him, and for Colin, because he's always so connection based. He's always like all of his journals are about feeling this emptiness in these moments of intimacy, and like something's missing. And here it is. Like and this is what makes me think like he did all that for an education to be able to pleasure a woman, her, and now he's seeing the fruits of his labors, and he's giving, he's 100% completely giving, not expecting anything in return. And his only gift in this moment is watching her reaction, watching her pleasure, watching her crescendo, watching her, get to the big O. Like that's all he's focused on. He's feeding off of her energy as he's creating that energy, and he's watching her first reactions, and like it's gorgeous.
It is a kink in itself. Is there are plenty of people out there who get off on watching someone else get off, and I feel like this is very much Colin. Like, and we get it in the books. He talks about during their first time, like he is desperately trying to make it good for her, make sure that she enjoys himself. Like, can you imagine this moment, how he felt walking away without reaching any crescendo of his own? Like that boy, I don't know how.
Why do you think he moved so fast the next day?
I don't know how he wasn't the one who fell out of the carriage, because I can't say he would have been walking straight. Like,
well, and honestly, like I think a lot of his brothel education was education. Like it was a sex ed. He was learning the ways of pleasuring a woman, and because he is a giver, and I think he wanted to bring these skills home for Penelope in my own canon.
I think a lot of men went to brothels just to get off, and it was a 1, 2, 3, thank you, ma'am, done. And I don't think it was anything about female pleasure. But whereas when you see movies like, what is it called? It's a male's name.
But we know from Antony, the norm of the time is
Casanova.
That fathers took their sons, and like the eldest son took the younger brothers,
but it was all about males' education of how they get off, not
of how they get off, because that's what creates the baby. I know, but Colin went for a different reason,
and that's why so many women in the movie Casanova loved Casanova, because he was very much about pleasuring a female specifically. It was very female written, and I mean, of course it was. It was Heath Ledger. Like,
of course it was.
Heath Ledger is female gaze written.
Heath Ledger was female gaze born. Okay.
Yes, like he did. I can't remember the night something night. Knight's Tale. A Knight's
I
Tale.
love Knight's
we
Tale.
had A Knight's Tale. We had Casanova. And then even
and 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yes, I love 10 Things I Hate About You. So female, and even
hell,
joke,
even Brokeback Mountain.
Oh,
it's two men, but still.
I remember watching that for the first time, and I was like scandalized, but also in a good way.
I know. I was like, have that in life. Like, how is that? Like, I want that.
Have you seen how many memes? You know that turned into a real thing. A woman, her husband was going on hunting trips, and it was actually just, I'm not going to go there. Okay, we need. It was a whole thing. Now I'm throwing.
It probably is a whole thing.
I got so excited I threw my mic in and I hit the pause button.
And that's hilarious.
Okay, right then, someone knocks at the door, breaking spell.
We're not going that far yet. Okay. We are still talking about this. Like, don't even cut me off like that.
Well, I mean, she cut him off like that.
Well, no, the footmen cut them off like that. But like, and what's so important here is like, he is so into her pleasure. Like, we all know the mechanics of what he's doing. We don't have to see what's going on below the dress, which I think they played that so well in this scene that, I mean, it's so female gaze written. We don't have to see it happen because we can't. These are two actors. This isn't porn. So we don't have to see that actually play out. It can be covered by the dress, but we can know based on their movements and their facial expressions, like, we know when it's the initial contact. We know when there's insertion. We know based on her reaction. And in that moment where he thought
she was
and the
bucking.
way that in that one moment where she jumped forward and he kind of pauses and she puts her hand on his cheek like, no, I'm okay. Like, they're having a whole conversation. Again, a whole conversation with no words. These two do not need to speak to each other. Their bodies are speaking to each other. Their eyes are speaking to each other. They don't need to use words. And just whole dance that they have.
I think that he knows as well when he first enters the gate that he obviously has had an education to know that that does hurt a female to at least some degree, especially if you're not ready, because he's like, oh no, am I hurting you? And he pauses like
he was ready.
Yeah, I know, but like it can still hurt. Like it initial.
It can be uncomfortable.
Yeah. And so he's like, oh no, like he is so desperate to have her.
He so wants it to be good. He so wants it to be good for her. He wants to avoid the inevitable things like the pain. Yeah. And I think that's why in the mirror scene, when that is happening, he tells her, like, you know, I've heard this hurts. Like he wants her to expect the pain because he doesn't want to do it. And he wants her to know he doesn't want to hurt her. Like in this moment, he didn't warn her. He's not educating her. They're just in the moment.
I think the scenes were too different. Like this one is just absolute visceral, whereas with the first time scene is very much raw, real, vulnerable. It is passionate, but it's not that same desperate desire of, are we ever going to get this moment again? What's going to happen after now? He's already proposed to her.
Slower.
So they know that they have time now.
They know they're going to have more times. Like they just have to get through this first time.
Desperate need for each other.
It's the fourth lesson. They have the 3 lessons, marriage lessons, and this is the 4th lesson. And I totally got that vibe from it because it felt like his little lessons he did to be close with her and to be alone with her. And this was the 4th lesson.
It wasn't husband training, it was marriage training for their marriage to be.
Yes. Like it was, I have always called them the marriage lessons for that reason. Like they were not the charm lessons. They were not the courting lessons. They were not, the confidence lessons. They were the marriage lessons because he was taking her step by step through the process of getting to the altar. Because when they turn at the altar, the look on his face is like, I got my girl. Like it worked.
I think a lot of people were not disappointed per se, but shocked at the difference between this scene and the mirror scene, because this one was like, it's pretty smutty, not in the sexual acts that is happening, but just in that raw, desperate passion for each other. And then we get to the first time.
It was built up. It was like the volcanoes finally erupting.
I think if they kept it the same as the first time, one, I don't think it would be true to a first time. I think they were trying to keep it very raw, very vulnerable, very sweet. And 2, I think if they had kept up this level of passion for the first time, that boy was not going to last. It would have been shorter than a 1-2 pump. It would have been not even in, and he's done. Like that boy was so pent up, and he wanted to make sure that she was ready, that she had the time to acclimatize to
acclimate,
to the stretch.
Yeah.
He was very much taking his time to make sure it was okay for her. So like,
and a first time for a woman, like if a man's doing it right, they're going to go slow for her. If her experience is important to him at all, it's not going to be that super high passionate. And in our first 2 seasons, those kind of tropes lend to that sort of culmination where it is all passionate. I burn for you, and they attack each other, and it's a little more wild. And then this forbidden, enemies to lovers, it's that forbidden like passion, forbidden love, and they attack each other. And I mean, all we ever see is him go down on her, but we know the whole thing happened. But it's still like, because it's forbidden, there's almost that passion, that crescendo, that it's going to be like, it wasn't intended to be tender. Friends to lovers needs to be tender for that first time, because they're slowly crossing that line of, we're going to be so much more, that it needs to be a slower journey. It needs to be sweeter. It needs to be softer, because they knew each other. They had their crescendo in the carriage, almost because we as viewers, and I think they as a couple, understood this is a short carriage ride. It's not going to get as far as that. So, and they're both in that, this is tonight. We're taking what we can tonight, and we're trying to get as much in. And that's why it was so fast. And that's why it was so passionate. Got to fit as much in as we can, because we know it's going to end. And then the next morning, when they're at the Love Shack, they realize together now, this isn't going to end. This is just a continuous story. So it can be slower. It really is like, you eat, like you have a meal, and you're shoveling it in, it's so good, and you don't know, we're inexperienced.
The more I
inexperienced, you're trying to take everything in, but when you realize that you're going to get to go again, then you don't do as much. Like, and the best example I'll give is cruising. Like, the first cruise I went on, I had to do all the things.
Yes.
Because I wasn't sure I was going to go again. And it really was exhausting. Like, I needed a vacation from my vacation, because I tried to do everything.
Japan,
all day,
I was out for 12 hours a day for 22 days straight with a toddler, walking 20 to 30,000 steps a day for every day. Are you surprised that I got sick? Not once, but twice in those 22 days? No. I was so run down, because I was doing it at a running pace, because I'm like, I need to soak in every moment of this. And if I'm not soaking in every moment of this, I'm wasting it.
And then when I realized, like, yes, cruising was a thing, I'm going to continue doing it, I slowed down. It's like, okay, I don't need to go to that particular thing. I've already done it, or I can do it the next time around. Or even, like, a better example is, like, I live in the state of Ohio, and there are things that are here that are famous that people want to see that I've never seen. I've never gone to look. Why? Because it's always there. I have the chance to see it whenever.
I've never been to Hobbiton, but to be fair, it's like traveling within New Zealand is not actually cheap. So if I'm going to be spending that much money, like, so for reference, the South Island.
For reference, how much is that? Because I want to do it whenever I come.
A lot.
I need to fit that into my budget.
It's a couple hundred just for the
a couple hundred's not a couple thousand. I can squeeze a couple of hundred.
No, but a couple hundred, and then the flights there, because to drive there, I don't think you'd cope. It's like it's over a day of driving straight, and a ferry, and it's a very vicious ferry that's also very expensive. So you'd have to fly there. So then I factor in another couple hundred, and then accommodation in New Zealand is expensive. So it'd be a couple of thousand, which is why I've never done it, because unless I had something else to do in that area, if I'm going to be spending thousands of dollars, I want to go see my family in Australia, or it's saving to go back to Japan, because I was already planning my next trip to Japan before I even left.
Yeah. Oh, I've always planned my next cruise before I've left a cruise, even if I knew I wasn't going to get to cruise for, a couple of years due to finances or whatever, or change in circumstances. Like, I still would plan, like, these are the ports I want to see next time, or, okay, these are off my cruising bucket list. Now, what are the next things I'm going to do?
I mean, if we're going to take it to the smutty side of things, it's like sometimes you have sex the first time and it's just to get out that raw passion, and it doesn't last very long, but that one's just like the raw passion time, and then the next time,
and then you wait the 5 or 10 minutes,
and then you wait the 5 or 10 minutes, and then those are the times where you get to do all the other things once you've got like the initial excitement, the occasionally excitable. It's me that's excitable. It's me.
It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me.
I'm always the problem. Let's be real. Steven's a gem.
Yeah, Kay and I were talking last night. Because and I don't know if you were present for this part or not, because we talked about it after. So just stop me if you've heard this. But where I had asked her, like, why do you think I need a quiet guy? But totally, like, I'm the problem. I'm kinetic energy. I'm like all over the place. And I need that, kind of like that lightning rod in the ground, grounded, so that when I'm lightning and I strike, it has somewhere to go and it can ground me.
Smorg is the Steven.
Oh, yes. He is very much. And I've even told him, like, I always felt like I was electron bouncing around like everywhere, and he's
you should have seen how chaotic my energy was before Stephen came along. And I was saying to someone the other day that, like, I'm a giver and I'm a lover and I love everyone around me, but I also surround myself with people that often need a lot. And that's because I have so much to give that for those of us who have that to give, you should give it in droves if you can. And it's because Stephen requires so little of me. And that's not to ever say that he doesn't require anything of me. It's just he doesn't have expectation of me. He just expects me, to be loving. He's willing for me to meet him with wherever I'm at. And he just, because he's my comfort, I come home and it's easy and it's comfortable and it's loving and fun and light. And it's not to say that we never have our harder moments, because we do. We're still a married couple. We're still two people with different thoughts and feelings, but it's just coming home to, I can breathe, So when I'm out, I can do all the things for my friends and my loved ones because I get to come home to that calm, and I think he is very much my for the New Zealand electricians, he is my earth to my positive electricity. He earths me and grounds me and stops me from, shooting out of control.
That was just my analogy with the lightning rod.
Yeah, but that's I was built. Yes, and because my husband's electrician, so I put it in more electrical terms. Yeah, the lightning rod is Stephen is my earth. I don't know if American houses have earth.
Lightning, like we have a grounding, like a lightning rod, a grounding. I don't know. I've never heard it be called in.
So all New Zealand houses that are built past a certain year, and then if they're built before that year, they've got to be retroactively added in. It's an earth. So you got your positive, your neutral. You need an earth, and it's to ground the house so you don't get shocked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just don't call it.
Okay. Well, it makes sense to earth something.
We have like the ground. I think it might be called the ground. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to have the ground.
Yes. And speaking of the ground, that is exactly what is about to happen. I like my little segue.
Screech to a halt. Yeah.
Right then, someone knocks at the door, breaking the spell, and both of them pull back, dazed, with an, "Oh, Colin, we are at your house."
Well, and here's what I love.
This is my favorite part, that they kept it from the book.
I know, but they kept it, but they twisted it, and it was such a perfect choice.
Yes.
That they gave the line to Colin instead,
yes.
Because he is so into this.
Yes.
He is drunk. He is drunk on her. He is drunk on her climax. Like that boy, yes. I feel like he climaxed off of her pleasure. Like,
yes,
you don't see that necessarily, but he is so into it that when she looks up and she's like, oh, when she turns her head and looks out the window, his head follows her and looks out the window, but then she goes, "Colin," and he's like, "What?" Like, he's so love drunk, he doesn't realize he just looked out the window and they are stopped. He's completely oblivious to anything going on around him. And she brings him back to earth with saying his name. And he's like, "What?" He goes, and he still is like, and she's like, "We're at your house." And he's like,
he goes, "Oh God, the carriage driver not keep on driving." I said, boy is a heathen for this girl. I love this
even
moment.
If he would have said, because in the book they take the long way. Like, even if he would have said, could the carriage driver not keep on driving? Couldn't he have taken the long way? I'd have been like, yes! I would have died. It would have been fantastic.
And I love that they took
just
this
that
moment.
Little 1 second.
Because in the book, Penelope says, I've already proven myself to be a wanton. Why not
or like be shameful, or
why not add shameless to the list?
Shameless, yeah.
And I love that they give that to Colin. He's like, well, she already knows that I'm completely infatuated with her. Like, why not just basically
why not
make
give
myself
yeah, let's go. Let's give everyone a show. Like, let's keep going. Let's tell the guy to keep driving. Like, he doesn't even care. And she just, I love that it struck her with the giggles too, because it was.
I said, I love that this moment for the laughter that they share while staring deeply into each other's eyes, just a proof of the comfort and intimacy between them.
Yes, they had just had this amazing, passionate connection that they've never had before, and to just go back to the foundation of who they are. They love each other's humor, and they love each other's quick-wittedness, because he's kind of being quick-witted and sarcastic here.
This is the first time that, like, the carriage ride for me is the first time that we lose Wigbert with Penelope. Like, this is where he is finally back to being Rawley himself. He's not putting on the air.
You're like we lose Wigbert, and I was lost for a second, but I get what you mean. Like, the coiffed,
the fake
Colin. Facade. Yeah.
Like, even the moment where he's giving her the marriage lessons in the drawing room at Bridgerton House, serving tea, and he's, we'll put this here and put this here, and he has this facade, and he's trying to be perfect for her. She just wants him to be him. She doesn't want perfection. She wants a raw vulnerability, and when he showed her raw vulnerability and confessing all those feelings,
rewarded.
He did, because she's like, this is the Colin that I love. When she talks about her reasoning for what she wrote about him and Lady Whistledown, this is what she's talking about. This is now Colin. She finally allowed him to enter into her space and be comfortable with him again, because he was finally being himself.
And that, like, even the whole time he had an agenda, he had something he was moving toward. Like, the marriage lessons were a plan to get her alone so that they could court secretly, because when he courted Marina and it was out in the open, it blew up in his face, I think. And, his family found out and they weren't pleased and all of this stuff. So he wanted to make sure Penelope felt the same way before it became public. Like, he didn't want to publicize it until everything was figured out and everything was. And honestly, and so he was fake. His whole fake, like, there was so much fakeness and facade put on in those moments, because he was raw inside and he was vulnerable, but he couldn't show that until he knew what her feelings were. So he was able to take his armor off because she had admitted she wanted him to.
I think if he had shown this raw vulnerability, even without saying the words that he did in the carriage, I think if he had reverted back to being true, honest, funny, kind example Colin from the marriage lessons, when in the study talking about his book, if he had been that Colin, when Devlin came up and asked for her hand, she would have turned him down and gone with Colin. But I think because even though she was having those close, intimate moments with Colin, she wasn't feeling that entire connection because he was still putting on that facade with her. And so I think she's like, oh, well, you're not the Colin that I fell in love with anymore. You are something else, or you are wearing armor right now. And I can't hope that you'll take off that armor one day.
She looks at him several times, like, I've heard other people on YouTube channels and people in the chats on Facebook and stuff say, like, she's always looking at him in raw moments where he almost gets vulnerable, or like he appears impassioned, that she's looking at him like she's never seen him before. Like, she knows something's up, but she just doesn't know what. And I think that, like, that's that feeling. She's kind of getting the ick, but not in an ick way, like not in a creepy way, just like there's something off, like there's something you're not telling me. And so she's not trustful of it. And in this moment, they are completely themselves. They are completely back on the same page. Like, even if, because they're about to have a whole conversation with no words again, like Colin makes up their whole, like, he discusses their whole future with her without saying a word, and every look and, fixing her dress and all that stuff. Like, all of that is done without words, but you see the whole thing on his face, like, Pen, you ready to do this? Whatever. And then he nods his head like, okay, good. here we go. Like he has the whole conversation in his head and he never voices it. And I love it so much. It cracks me up. But this moment, like they're back to themselves. They're back to the Colin and Penn we know from season 1, season 2. What a barb. Yeah, what a barb and all of that. And just that it breaks the what awkwardness there was in the moment, even though it was passionate and it was beautiful. There's still a level of awkwardness because they both are still in disbelief that each other wants each other. So it's like there's still that undertone of awkward, but in this moment they break that curse. They break that. I mean, better, that's the best thing I can say is they break the curse. And like that is why this upcoming kiss is my favorite kiss of the season. Well, yeah, most kids are.
Sorry to interrupt Patty there. Unfortunately, because my little boy is sick, he can't be out of the house today. Maybe a wee bit more difficult.
And he needs more attention and chocolate.
And cuddles. Cuddles. Mummy cuddle. Did you recall where you were up into your thought pattern?
Yes,
sorry.
I was up to my favorite kiss of the season.
Yes.
Because
we're not.
Yeah, because we had talked about how they giggled over him sarcastic.
No, because we still got the chorus. The whole
conversation.
Okay, so
then I'll skip back and I'll say my thing there because I think what is so important about this, where she says, "Do you think anyone saw us? I wasn't paying much attention to anything."
They were driving with the windows open through the center of Mayfair.
But what's important here is like I brought it up in the apology scene in the garden where he says, "I seek you out at every function because you make me see the world in ways I'd never thought about." Mr. Worldwide, the world traveler who has seen these places, and Penelope hasn't, she makes him think differently about the world. And here in this moment, he made Lady Whistledown, the probably most observant person in the ton, not notice anything.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't notice much of anything.
Yeah.
So it's so important. Like, it's so important that the two of them in the same moment that they make each other a better version of themselves, that they also take themselves out of, kind of take the wind out of themselves too.
Both of them clearly lost in the days of the desire that they have for each other. Elation over finally coming together. Not
yet.
Well, I mean, we never know. But I think you're really right.
I think he climaxed. I think he came when she came because he was so plugged in. Literally and figuratively.
One moment that I wish we got that we didn't get, and it would just be a really cheeky. I think it's probably a little bit too crude to put on TV, but I wish he hopped out of the carriage and just readjusted his pants because,
oh my God,
I mean, it's something that happens like all the time. Like you just finish and then, someone's arrived at your house and you've got to put on clothes.
Well, I would have loved, and I think a lot of people talked about this after this part aired too. Like, I would have loved to see him represent himself. Like he's helping make her presentable, which I think is important because that shows the tenderness and the love. Like, because this Colin knows he loves her, whereas in the book, he still wasn't fully sure.
Yes.
So he's helping her become presentable because he doesn't want anyone talking about her reputation or, and her. And whether
in the book, he's trying to get his
anything,
hair right, and
and in the book, he's fixing himself, and he asks if he looks presentable. And I think that we needed a little bit of that, like a little bit of I think
the difference is that they are about to enter into Bridgerton House and not into Featherington House, and I actually think he wants to walk in. For those who know, which is only going to be potentially, if let's pretend for a second that they were there, would only be Violet and Benedict, and he wants them to know, this is my girl, this is non-optional, this has happened, I am marrying her. I think
because of Anthony, yes, he wanted to go in.
If Anthony was
her
there,
to look pristine,
because he knows that if Anthony is there and he walks in looking disheveled Anthony is going to spot that in a second.
Yep.
And
1 + 1 is 2.
He knows he cannot question it then. He will give his brother arseholes for it, but he cannot question it because you have dishonored her. You must marry her now.
Yeah.
I think that was his game. That was his game plan.
He wants to have the announcement he got, which is where he gets to tell his mother and his family, and it's all a, jubilee, joyous moment. But just in case Anthony arrived on time, because remember, you arrived, so they knew that he was expected, but he was late.
They both had the swollen lips. They were not present. Like, she was tidy.
They didn't stop at a wash basin. They didn't stop at a wash basin. Like, no offense. There's an aroma that comes with. So there was that definitely comes with coming. There's an aroma that happens when these things happen, and that was not washed off. He didn't focus on fixing his shirt or his jacket. I mean, he did tug on his waistcoat, which is a nervous habit Colin always does. So I didn't look at that as presenting himself. But yeah, I mean, just a little bit of adjustment in the carriage, just, kind of as an intimate moment for her, I think would have been cute. But yeah, he definitely wanted to go in. So making it obvious some business happened.
This next second for me is probably one of for you, it's the kiss and it is the kiss. But for me, it starts before the kiss because this is one of the most common tropes written in romance genre. But this is what they mean. Colin perfectly summarized. This is what Colin's face turns the most sultry. You see that his eyes darken. And this is exactly when a romance writer says his eyes darkened. It was with desire, but it was with a desire that knowledge. I will have you for the rest of my life. That was, in that moment, he was making that choice. This is how good this is. This is mine. This is it was almost a possessive darkening of the eyes.
Yes.
You are mine.
And I think he'd already made that choice. So when they had this moment of them still just being them, and he looks at her and he realizes kind of like Sweet Home Alabama.
But he knew he was going to do it right then.
Yeah. He knew this is the moment that we're walking into this house. I've got to convince her, or maybe I don't have to convince her. But this is the moment he realizes I'm going to kiss Penelope Featherington, soon to be Bridgerton, for the rest of my life. And not that he hadn't already decided that, he wanted to marry her.
You know what I think this was?
To the ball.
I think this was, I'm going to kiss Penelope Featherington one last time.
One last time. Yes.
I mean, and it wasn't the last time, but I think he went in with the intention of trying to get to the wedding being honorable, but he was like, nah, can't do it.
Yeah. Or I mean, this kiss is so sweet. It's probably I'm kissing my friendship goodbye, and we're saying hello to our future. And it's just that perfect. It really is such a perfect kiss. It's connection between two people. It's knowing things have changed, but both being joyous in that change, both wanting that change. That is the turning point. That kiss right there is the turning point. We know we're together. We know we're still us, but better, right? We've created something better.
This is the exact opposite to in Harry Met Your Mother when Barney and Robin date for the first time and they break up and he's like, I can't believe we failed. We wanted this so badly. And she said, we're not breaking up. We are two friends getting back together. And I kind of like that. But this is the opposite of that. This isn't an end of a friendship. It's a continuation into more.
Yeah. They know they're taking that step and they're finally on the road together. They're clasped hands on the journey together. We're going to do this together. And that kiss just is a promise. It's a seal and a promise.
So I wrote, he then leans back into still another kiss. This kiss is no longer just passion, but it symbolizes the connection. And as he pulls away, you can see the smallest cheeky smile on his expression as he decides that he needs to make her somewhat presentable for his family. I love that it was I made her look like this. She is swollen lips. She is sultry. She is completely dressed in desire. Because that is the only way, her body, her mask,
her chest
aroma.
was all rosy and red. We even saw that in the behind the scenes photos. Her skin is flushed. She's an Irish girl. So as an Irish girl,
he was all up in there.
Yeah. Even as an Irish girl, even if he hadn't been kissing it and kind of drawing the blood to the surface in some parts, she got flushed naturally. Like when I get red, I get
not?
red and flushed. Right.
How could you not though?
So he knew, like, and I'm going to take a future line. And I think this is part of the reason they put it where they did, right? When she says, do I look a mess at the end of that? He's not asking. He notices, oh, she looks a mess. She's my mess. I'm going to clean her up. I'm going to fix her up. I'm going to make her presentable. And I'm going to present my diamond to my family.
Now, let's talk about the moment that broke the internet. Those fingers. Because Colin then uses his back two fingers and his thumb,
yes,
the ones that haven't been touching the intimate areas of Penelope, to lift her just broken my computer again. I've just thrown my microphone, backed it onto. Oh no, it's typed into my notes now. I
couldn't swallow my drink. I was about to spit it everywhere. Luke Newton, your fingers. Look what they do.
They break us, okay? They break everything. Oh, I'm not even presentable anymore myself.
They take all the intelligence out of our brains.
But I love that he gets his fingers and it's,
it's the two,
there's no touching. It's the back ones. Like, I'm not going to touch her with my soiled fingers.
He's like, nope, I'm saving those for under my nose tomorrow.
You're such a heathen. To lift her shoulder strap back up, and then he tidies her hair. I love that throughout this entire scene that he stays within an inch's proximity to her, like he has spent an entire lifetime with too much space, and now he's unwilling to have any more between them.
The Colin that we talk about, like, there is such a thing as personal space, Colin Bridgerton. Why are you so close, Colin Bridgerton?
No bubble.
Now there's zero. He's in the bubble with her, like, forever. Like, they are in the bubble together. Like, the whole, and how tender he is with her hair. And she's never been loved like this. And she's doing, like, I love that. Like, she's just so, like, curious, and she's never experienced this before.
And she's a debutante for the first time in her life, where everything is new and fresh and unknown, and she never even allowed herself to dream about scenarios like this ever happening, because who would ever do that with Penelope Featherington? So she doesn't know how to proceed, because she's never even, I feel like Penelope muses out so many scenes in her head, but only ones that she could fathom actually happening. Fights with Cressida. She's probably played out a million fights with Cressida. Conversations that she wants to have with Eloise. Oh, I can't let Eloise know that I like love, so I need to phrase it this way. Any interactions that she has with her mum. Oh, I need to be really cautious of how I say this and how I act here, because I need to protect myself. With Colin, it's I don't know what's happening. I don't know what to do or say, because this is something new that I haven't even thought out.
And like what you said just sparked with me, like, the reason they work together so well is because she is just as imaginative as him. She's also a writer, but she's the writer that has to write from what she knows. This is why she's Whistledown. If she can't imagine it happening, she can't imagine it. She can't plan it out in her head. But Colin is a dreamer. He's going to write the fiction. This is why I think he writes The Wallflower. Yeah. He is the fiction writer. He is imagine we're at a ball and this is where the musicians are. And this is, like, he can picture and walk through and create a scene that hasn't happened, that he doesn't know. He has dreamt of Penelope Featherington, even though he doesn't know what that experience is like. He's able to do that and come together. He is going to draw out her romantic, imaginative side.
I hope that Benedict
is going to help the cover. Ground him a little bit.
I want Benedict to do the cover of The Wallflower, and, like, you know how some books have, like, little flourishings on the pages? I want Benedict to do them, because that's his mum. That's his mum and dad's love story, and to have all the different siblings kind of have their little.
We talked about this, about how they have the smut book business, but they also do children's books. I honestly think with the morally gray area of Whistledown, I think that would be a perfect career path for them. Like, having the romance book, smut business, but also being under a different pen name, the children's book writers. I just think that's.
Yeah. But the way that so Colin finally pulls back and assesses Penelope entirely before steadying himself and hopping out of the carriage. No matter how sure that you are in that moment. Oh, Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, you're skipping every facial expression because you have to watch his face.
Sorry, I scrolled too far.
Yeah. He's asking her to marry him. Are you presentable? Yes, you are. Am I presentable? Presentable enough. I look exactly how I need to look for the plan to unfold. Like he's having this whole conversation in his head, and you can
see the micro expressions. You can.
Yes.
They all play out in the way his eyes darken and
the way he looks her up and down, not once but twice.
And
then when he gets out of the carriage and does it again.
But he then does this look of like, yes,
pure triumph.
Yes. This is exactly as it's meant to be. Like it's falling into place. This is perfect. You are perfect.
Yeah.
We're going to do this. And you can tell that he is nervous.
Colin, and this is where this is Chaos Colin, and where he jumps in, like how Daphne said he plans things out, and you never know when he's going to strike. He is striking now because the iron is hot. And that's a figurative, but he knows this is the moment. You can tell that he's still now.
He's still anxious. You can hear him like heavily breathing. He's got like a little bit of a nervous energy about him because no matter how sure you are, it's still nerve-wracking. How is everyone going to take it? Is my mother?
And again, he's afraid of rejection from Penelope. He's afraid to find out she's not on the same page with him, which is why he's never expressed his feelings this whole season, which is why he has this whole conversation in his head. And that when she doesn't realize what's going on, that is why he so cheekily asks the way he does, because it can't be serious because he's afraid of the answer. Mm-hmm. As much as he seems sure, he's still afraid of the answer. He's afraid of losing her.
I think I remember when my husband proposed to me, and he took me on a helicopter flight, and I remember that and I knew when we hopped in the helicopter that it was happening, but he was a little ball of energy. We had been together for years at that point. We'd already talked about our marriage. We'd already planned out half of it. There was no question of, am I going to say yes? But we were both still nervous because you're nervous because you're setting a life, and it's not that you don't want that life, but it's so much uncertainty and so much change that can happen that it is just it's an anxious moment. It's happy, but when we are excited, our body does not know the difference between excited and anxious. It physically has the exact same reaction in our body.
Which is why a lot of people think that they are having, that they're excited about a person when really they're feeling danger, Will Robin said.
Yes. But the way that...
and I just had a little moment of sad because even though I had been a married woman, I never got that. I never got it. And I'm not trying to get vulnerable here, but I just watching you be excited and even reliving it and telling it in such an excited way and how nervous you guys were. That's the one thing in my life. And yes, I'm a romance girly, but I'm not a romantic girly. I didn't plan my wedding. I didn't sit there and think about what my wedding would look like whenever I was going to get married. And none of that. That was not me at all. And yes, I had a person that I wanted to marry, but I never imagined what the proposal would be like or whatever. And here I am on the back end. Well, not the back end. I'm kind of in the middle of my life, but still it's that's something that everyone deserves, that moment.
I can't actually believe I got it. Even myself, Stephen is so autistic coded that I didn't think that I was ever going to get that. And I was okay with that. So when I did get it and it was grand, it was a surprise.
He's such a John Sterling.
And you know what the funny thing is I chucked a huge hissy fit because I didn't think it was going to happen. And I went out and Rage bought a whole bunch of, he thought I was leaving, but really I just went and Rage bought stationery for my exam that was coming up. And here he is. I'm out Rage shopping for pens and highlighters, and here he is with my mum planning this grand adventure. And he took me to the place that I first said I love you, and he took me there. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, he's gonna propose here. The first place I ever told him I loved him, and that was where we went on our anniversary the other day, was to Tekapo. And then we leave, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. It's not gonna happen. That's fine. And then we walk into this helicopter place, and I'm like, you what now? One of our friends, they got engaged, and he videoed it. He made her go on a hike and she's not, neither of them are fit, to the top of this mountain. And he raced to the top of the mountain, and he filmed her literally crawling up the last patch to get to the top, and she is sweaty and she's like, I hate you. And it's, and I said to Stephen, don't you ever propose to me at the top of a mountain. I do not want to be looking like a sweaty, heaving mess. Don't you do that to me. So he challenged me and he helicoptered me to the top of the mountain. He goes, you put in a boundary, and I snuck around it.
That's adorable.
But he took me to the top of us. He had been waiting, and here I am thinking he was cancelling our plans to go away, but he was waiting for it to snow so that there would be snow at the top of the mountain. And here I am thinking, oh, he's cancelling our trip away, but he was waiting for it to snow for me because I grew up in Australia where it does not snow. And he knew I wanted the snow. It was really sweet. Sorry. I'm sorry, but it was sweet. And you know what Stephen's like.
It was sweet and adorable.
It was really thoughtful. It was. Until he tackled me in the snow and bit my leg backwards. Oh,
but that's the whole thing though. Like, as perfect as anything can be, it's those little moments like that make it truly memorable.
Oh, I don't look back at it and think, oh, you tackled me in the snow. He was excited to kiss me, and he was like,
yeah, that's what I'm saying though. It doesn't have to be perfect. Like, there could be a mistake.
Yeah.
Like, the best thing, I mean, I don't have a proposal, but my first kiss with somebody was, I mean, it was in the snow swirling around, like it's a snowy day, and like I wasn't ready. I didn't think that, yes, we had started dating, but no, I didn't think he was going to kiss me. I was not prepared for it. And he just like snuck in super fast, like so quick, and I missed it. And I was literally almost like, almost a toddler stomped my foot. Like, no, come on. That was too fast. I missed it. Do it again. And he got frustrated. But then he kissed me again, and it was like perfection, like the lights coming out of the windows. It was dark. There was snow. Like, even as perfect as it was, the part that I remember the most is how he was nervous. So it was so fast. And then I was like, oh, come on. I missed it. I didn't feel it. Like, I want to feel it. Mm-hmm. And he ended up acquiescing and giving me what I wanted, even though like I think he was frustrated that it wasn't perfect, of course. But that's the part that I remember the most, though, for me, is that when it wasn't that it wasn't special to me or important to me or whatever. It's that I needed it to happen again so that it would be like, because it doesn't count if you didn't know it was coming and you didn't feel it. It doesn't count. So
you wanted a moment to just rejoice in it.
Yes, I wanted my moment, and I got it in spades.
Well, Penelope got her moment as well, and Colin hopped out of the carriage, and she thought her moment is done and she needs to remember this for the rest of her life. He just hops out so suddenly, and Penelope's anxious, kind of unsure voice calling out, Colin, kind of broke my heart, because she really thought that it was just a moment of ecstasy and nothing more, despite the confession of the feelings.
He wasn't going to say goodbye or anything. That's what the feeling I got. Like, where are you going?
He got what he wanted, and now we're just back to being friends. Like, this is done, and I need to, that's my moment for the rest of my life. That's what I have to live with. In all the moments I have to care for my mother and be berated by her and belittled by her for the rest of my life, I at least have this moment.
Yes.
Colin is breathing heavily as he exits the carriage, looking back over Penelope. He raises his hand.
Third up and down look. Yes.
Yes. He raises his hand up to Penelope in a gesture to help her out of the carriage and says, are you coming with me? Pen, clearly confused as to whether he wants her to continue their dalliance upstairs or what, replies, what? Your family will see me. Colin, exasperated that she still doesn't get it.
She doesn't get it. Like, I've been asking you to marry me for years now, since last year. Like, that's how I felt there. Like,
context
we said words,
clues, Penelope. Yeah, lady, whistle down.
She doesn't get context clues, so I'm gonna have to spell it out.
For God's sake, Penelope Featherington, are you going to marry me or not?
I love the cheek. I love the cheek, but I felt his frustration there, because I believe their spoken words at the end of season 2 were like him saying, I'm going to court you. We're getting married someday, whatever. But he didn't say those words. And there's so many times that the words that could have or should have been said weren't exactly said. And so now we're here in this moment and she's still just not getting it.
She's not getting it.
Oh my gosh. Come on, girl. Catch up.
Like he knows her so well that he knows that she's still not getting it, but he now has all the confirmation that he needed that she's on board. She just is so deep in her self-doubt, and her insecurity that she thinks it was only what it was. And he's like, I'm not Fife, like, get out here, girl. We're doing this.
Right. Like, you want me to get back in? We can go to Gretna Green right now. Like, I'm not going to plan shit. We're going.
Like, yes, I do want you to come upstairs with me, but we do have to go see my family first.
Right. To be like, Mother, yes, I know it seems quick, but we are married. I can't tell you who married us or any of that, but we are married. I promise. Like, and I just want to take my wife upstairs.
I kind of think that Violet would allow it. Personally.
I think that if Colin would have walked in and said, we're married, Violet been like, okay. You're married?
I feel like if he walked in and they didn't bump into each other, but she sees Penelope coming out and he goes up to her and says, Mother, I am heading right to get a special license today. It's all sorted. She'd be like, okay.
That was Colin in the book, though.
Yes.
Like, he sped up the marriage. Like, some things happened, and he made them believe it had been happening for
months.
Weeks.
Yeah.
Like, this has been happening for weeks. Your daughter's a wanton. I'm a wanton for her. We cannot control ourselves.
He was essentially saying she could be she could be quite far along by this point. We don't want a scandal, so you mamas better hurry up the planning because I'm gonna marry that girl. But I sort of love the way that Penelope reacts by not even saying anything, but it is clear that everything that she has ever wished for in life has just come true, and she doesn't even have the words for it. Like, her breathing and her visceral reactions is the yes.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like those women you see in proposal videos when he opens the ring box or pulls it out, like that moment of suspension of disbelief and like, I'm getting what I wanted. Like, I've been fighting for this. I've been wanting this, whatever, just wondering when it was going to happen. Or like, for me, the best I can equate it to is like, she finally opened her Christmas present and it was the Super Nintendo 1990.
Yes.
Like, you've been wanting this video game console forever. Your parents always said no. And guess what? You open it at Christmas. Like finally getting that gift I wanted.
I think it was about 1997 that we probably got a Nintendo 4.
Oh yeah, 1997, because that's when Smaug and I got a Nintendo 64, and we lived in his apartment that entire summer and just played Super Mario Kart.
I still have. I actually have my Nintendo 64, and my husband built me a custom case to house the gaming, the controllers, and the thing, because there's no, it's all in one box.
And I'm going to give you a story that completely says, like, this is Smaug and this is Patty. So we went to Best Buy's for weeks, and they had it set up like you could play the Sega console, the new Sega console. You can play you can play the Sega console, or you can play the Nintendo 64 console, but you could play the games there. Like, and we were playing the games there for free. They only let you have like a time limit, 15 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever. But we would, like, every day off we had, because we both worked at the same place that summer. Mm-hmm. So every day off we had, like, our date was going to Best Buy and playing the video game there.
I love that.
He's going through the thought process of, does he want it? Does he want it? Because it costs so much money. Does he want it? Does he want it? Does he want it? Well, here's Patty in this year. Like, she's making her money. She's paying her bills. But when Patty has extra money, she likes to give it to other people. Like, she just, yes, I like putting joy out in the world. And I ended up being like, look, I know you're so focused on the money, but literally every day off, this is what we're doing. Mm-hmm. I've got half. Just leap. Just do. Like, and he finally did, but and that's how, like, that is so us. Like, he just thinks about something and thinks about something and thinks about something and thinks about something. And I'm like, you want to do it, just do it. And that was the Nintendo 64 experience. And it made our summer.
All right, gentle listeners. I think that we are going to leave it there for today. We have finally gotten through our biggest episode yet. It is going to be a very long listen. Well done if you get through this in one listening.
If you hear these sentences and you did not stop ever and go back, like pat yourself on the back in the Facebook group, like throw a post in, shout out to me. I did the whole carriage spicy scene in one listen.
Carriage scene. Mark yourself safe.
Mark yourself safe. Mark yourself safe from the carriage spicy episode.
I didn't combust from horniness or excitement.
Perfect. Mark yourself in the Facebook group. Mark yourself safe from the carriage spicy pod episode that you listened the whole way through and did not spontaneously combust.
For today, gentle listeners, we will leave it there and continue on next week's episode. Obviously, we are now done with the Polin episodes for episode 4. These have been an absolute wild ride, especially today's episode. Thank you for those who have tuned in week after week. It has been an amazing ride to get through this with you. I feel like this is absolutely the precipice of peak Bridgerton season 3. So after here, we are going to go on and continue on episode 4's side stories. So it feels a little bit like going backwards again, but it means we get to talk about all the other love stories that are developing through season 3. And then after that, we're going to take a brief intermittence from our regular scheduled episodes to kind of do some more, not fun, but just shake things up a little and get to dive into some of the different details of the season that we've been wanting to, including, as the popular vote is resoundingly in, is a deep dive on Penelope Featherington / Bridgerton / Lady Whistledown.
Yes.
If you have anything in particular you would like us to cover or any Bridgerton knowledge you would like to share, please head to our Facebook page, The Ladies Bridgerton. If you're enjoying our podcast, please remember to click follow on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or wherever you are listening.
Once again, thank you for listening to the musings of 2 mad and spent women.
Yours truly, Tash the Wonton.
And Lady Patty. I'm still a lady.
There's no lady about me.